Tonight, the victims, the suspected ISIS sympathizer, and how the Richmond community is uniting to honor the lives lost after the terror in Orlando. Moments ago, FBI officials arrived at the suspected gunman's home to collect evidence.
And good evening. We're on your side tonight with comprehensive team coverage of this deadly attack on a nightclub in Orlando, Florida.
We have multiple crews standing by locally, but we need to begin with Jay Gray with the latest. Jay, thanks. And tonight, more than 100 students gathered at VCU to remember the Orlando victims. We saw scores of students lighting candles in the Compass and a tearful and somber memorial. Stephanie, thanks. Well, you've likely seen this stunning photo. Orlando police say an officer's Kevlar helmet likely saved his life. He was shot in the head by the gunman. A Richmond police source says there's no evidence of any threat to our city. But tonight, we're delving into how officers respond to mass shootings and the lasting effects on the men and women who fight so hard to keep us safe.
It's a very complicated scene to roll up on, especially when you have mass casualties like this. Not only do you have the casualties, but you have just as many, if not more, people injured.
Dana Shroud of Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police says the response to a complicated scene like the one in Orlando Sunday comes down to two key elements.
First of all, protect the innocent. Secondly, eliminate the threat.
Virginia police had to follow this simple yet complex formula in 2007 during what was the deadliest mass shooting in the United States before Orlando's at Virginia Tech.
So your training kicks in, your adrenaline kicks in as a responder to try to make all those things happen and set your emotions aside so you can do your job.
When the threat is eliminated and the scene calmed, the situation is far from over, and that's when emotions kick in.
The investigation takes weeks to complete. Those folks are still on the job for several weeks, and the amount of trauma and stress that they experience over that time is something that we as a law enforcement community can't ignore.
Sometimes so overwhelming, Shroud says some officers never recover.
We occasionally often lose officers who decide 6 months to a year later, I don't think I can do this anymore.
For those that stay, Shroud says with grief comes learning.
Every time we have an incident like this, we take a look at, what were the indicators? How could we have prevented this?
Our Richmond police source says the department is always assessing and staying on top of any situation. We touched on the gunman's past earlier in the broadcast, but now we're delving a little deeper. While friends of Omar Mateen described him as a pretty normal guy, his ex-wife tells a far more terrifying story. She describes a fiery temper and abuse from a man who she says trained with guns and at one point even wanted to be a police officer. The ATF has traced the weapons used in the attack and says Mateen bought the guns legally. He was already on the FBI's radar, suspected of being an ISIS sympathizer. And there are countless stories from those who survived the horror and made it out of the nightclub. Our sister station spoke with one man who describes his own escape. A community who knows all too well the pain of the people in Orlando. Friday marks 1 year since the deadly mass shooting in Charleston. These colorful paper cranes were sent to the Circular Congregational Church by another city that had suffered a massacre. On Facebook tonight, this church posted plans to pass them on to Orlando. A heavily armed man, apparently headed to the Pride Festival in Los Angeles, is also in custody tonight. And while authorities do not suspect this is connected to the attack in Orlando, they say a man was found with multiple weapons in his car. That includes at least one assault rifle and tannerite, which can be used to make a pipe bomb. We'll keep you posted on this investigation as it unfolds. We have much more news to get to tonight, but we want to take a moment and reset and bring you a check of the weather. Developing now, 12 people are forced to find another place to stay after the South Richmond home goes up in flames. This is what our cameras captured at the scene off Blandy Avenue at about 2 o'clock this morning. It took firefighters about 30 minutes to get the fire under control. No word yet on a cause, but fortunately it doesn't appear anyone was hurt. Tomorrow, a Chester woman killed in a tragic accident at Virginia Beach will be laid to rest. Lodi Belk's visitation begins at noon at First Baptist Church Centralia. Her funeral will immediately follow at 2 p.m. Belk was in Virginia Beach with family members when a wind gust lifted a nearby umbrella, which struck her in the chest. She died a short time later. We still have much more ahead here on 12 News, and we'll be following this story throughout the week and keep you updated along the way. And that coverage will begin at 4:30. But for now, that does it for us on NBC 12 News at 11.